Hey everyone, it's Jonah with the Hogwarts Rejects, and today we'll be going over Milestone 3. First, I'd like to address some of the concerns we received from our classmates. Regarding signifiers, we also believe that inscribing buttons would be against Apple's design principle, so we decided on leaving it to the on-screen display walkthrough. As another classmate mentioned, users would only need to learn where it is a minimal amount of times, given that users use it frequently throughout the day. We also saw a concern for our solution's relativity to the theme of remote work. Remote workers don't stay at home all the time, and in some situations, a user's phone is the only access to the work. For instance, the recent tropical storm Zeta left thousands without internet or power, leaving most to resort to their phones to work, if at all. Lastly, we decided to prioritize Touch ID over Iris ID due to accessibility issues the Iris ID would introduce. So for our user stories, we came up with two. As a remote worker, I want to unlock my iPhone easily so that I can access my applications for work without needing to take off my mask. And the second one being, as a remote worker, I want to purchase an application I need for work so that I can work efficiently. And Mustufa will go more in depth with that.
Two of the biggest user stories that we thought that would relate to our solution were the first one being, as a remote worker, I want to be able to unlock my iPhone easily so that I can access my applications for work without having to take my mask off. And the second one being able to purchase an application for work so I can work more efficiently in a quick and efficient manner, obviously. And the two things that stood out for to solve this user story were being able to unlock the iPhone with Touch ID and Iris ID. And going into our relevance, our solution will help us complete our user stories that I just previously stated, and these problems that are standing out in the current iPhones. We think that our solution can more than meet the new standard that is being set by other phone companies and whatnot. And the three biggest issues by iPhone users today, or iPhone users are currently facing today, are users have to take off their mask to open their phone sometimes, and that can be dangerous, especially being in the midst of a pandemic. Uh, Not the smartest thing, just taking your mask off just to be able to open your phone. So I definitely think our solution can solve that issue. Unlocking the phone can be tedious with the current methods that Apple's using, and you know the current way how things are set up with remote work and whatnot, having to wear a mask and things of that nature, you having to waste that extra time just to be able to unlock your phone, can cause you to be tardy to some virtual meetings. So
Hi, I'm Cindy, and I'm going to talk about our ideas for alternative designs based on the user stories we presented and then show the wireframes. An Iris ID sensor will allow users to unlock the phone with their eyes. For remote workers wearing masks, they'll be able to unlock the phone without taking off their masks. Iris scanning is a way of securely keeping the contents of a user's phone, introduced on Samsung's Galaxy S8 and S8 Plus. It uses the biometric information of the user's irises to identify the user. Because virtually no two irises are alike, as well as being almost impossible to replicate, scanning a user's irises was deemed to be a foolproof method of mobile security. The iris scanner for Iris ID will be at the top of the screen next to the front camera. The placement of the scanner in the front rather than the back makes sense because the user will be able to know if iris scanning is being conducted correctly. There will be visual signifiers on the screen prompting the user. A Touch ID function will allow users to unlock the phone with their fingerprint. For remote workers wearing masks, they'll be able to unlock the phone without taking off their masks. The power button on the side will be used as an interface to scan fingerprints of users. On the screen, the user will be prompted to use the interface to unlock the phone. Based on Apple's human interface guidelines, there will not be an icon on the power button similar to what we proposed in Milestone 2. Apple's human interface guidelines states to not use icons to identify system authentication features. When people see icons that look like the system's Touch ID and Face ID icons, they think they're supposed to authenticate. Using icons to identify authentication features creates inconsistency and causes confusion, especially when The icons are colorized, displayed at a large size, and presented out of context. Although there will not be an indication on the hardware, there will be other guides to let the user know that the power button will act as a fingerprint scanner. This information will also be included in the manual. We propose Touch ID to be integrated into the power button on the side rather than how it was before, such as the home button being used as an interface for Touch ID, in order to maintain the sleek design of iPhones. In addition, Apple will be able to save the cost of having another interface for Touch ID by upgrading an already existing interface. Now moving on to wireframes. This wireframe is for Iris ID. In the first artboard for this wireframe, it says swipe up to unlock at the bottom. This was based on the current text content written on the main screen of an iPhone 11 Pro Max. For iPhone 11 Pro Max, such text appears when the user tries to unlock the phone using Face ID. After the user swipes up, the user will be prompted to use Iris ID to unlock the phone. Using the iris scanner at the top, users will be able to unlock their phone. This screen will be there until the user successfully unlocks the phone. Once the iris information is confirmed, the unlocked lock will appear as shown in the third artboard. Then, the user will be led to the app that the user was trying to open. This is an alternative wireframe for our Iris ID. This wireframe On this wireframe, the text below is switched to use Iris ID to unlock. Once the user tries to unlock the phone by clicking on the notification from the app, the user will be guided to the screen looking like the second artboard. The user will be able to unlock the phone by either Iris ID or by entering the passcode if the user has set up a passcode. The unlocking feature using the iris scanner will work as the same as the original design. Using the iris scanner at the top, the user will be able to unlock the phone. If the user is able to unlock the phone with Iris ID, the user doesn't have to put in the passcode. Once the iris information is confirmed, the unlocked lock will appear as shown in the third artboard, and then the user will be led to the app that they were trying to open. This wireframe shows the original design for the Touch ID function using the fingerprint scanner on the power button on the side of the phone. The text at the bottom says, "Press power to unlock." This message was formulated based on the message that popped up in previous iPhones with the home button, which said to press home to unlock. When the user puts their finger on the power button, the user will be prompted with the image that is shown in the second artboard. The user will use the finger, which was used to save the fingerprint information in the security feature, and will be able to unlock the phone. If the fingerprint cannot be scanned due to numerous reasons, including the fingerprint information not being a match, the phone will remain locked. This wireframe is the alternative design for the Touch ID function. The text at the bottom is switched to touch power to unlock rather than press power to unlock. This change was made considering the fact that the word press may be confusing to some users. Once the user touches the power button, they will be prompted to scan their fingerprint or to enter their passcode if the user has a passcode set up. If the user either puts in a passcode or is able to successfully scan their fingerprint using the fingerprint scanner on the power button on the side of the phone will be unlocked.
Hi, I'm Roya, and I'm going to be discussing detailed designs, mockup part C. So the wireframe, which includes the Touch ID on the power button, is the best design out of all of our presented wireframes as it complies more with Apple's human interface guidelines, creates better usability for the visually impaired, and is more secure. So this mockup is based off of the Touch ID wireframe, and in the first frame you see a daily Scrum meeting notification popped up on the screen. Meeting starts in 1 minute. So the user wants to quickly access or unlock their phone in order to access this meeting. They might not be at home wearing, like they might be in the grocery store wearing a mask, and they just need to quickly connect in order to like listen in onto the meeting. So on the bottom of the screen it says press power to unlock, which is very similar to older iPhones that have the Touch ID on the home button where it says press home to unlock. So the only difference is that the Touch ID is now on the power button on the right side of the phone. So once they do that, there is a Touch ID to open Zoom, which is another signifier that Apple also had on previous phones such as the iPhone 8. So Touch ID to open Zoom or whichever application they're trying to access for remote work. And the third frame shows the unlock signifier, which shows them that they have accessed their phone, and the fourth screen is their home screen. And some applications that are applicable to remote work are in this mock-up, such as Zoom, Slack, Duo Mobile, and a VPN. So the best alternative design was the Touch ID and the wireframe that complies most with Apple's human interface guidelines. Some signifiers I stated before were the Zoom notification, press power to unlock, lock and lock logo, and fingerprint scanner. Factors such as wearing a mask during remote work take away from the integrity of Face ID and lean more towards a better usability and design based on iris recognition. However, Face ID includes settings for an accessibility feature to support individuals who are blind or have low vision, and the iris recognition would not take account for this and would go against Apple's design for accessibility, which is an integral part of Apple products. And this decision led us to the Touch ID mockup. Guidelines that are similar to the iPad Air 4 are evident in this mockup, as the iPad also has the Touch ID on the power button on the top of the screen. However, this design decision to put the sensor on the power button maintains a wide enough structure for the fingers to be detected, similar to the iPad 4 has the power button. The 0.33-inch button frame on the iPhone would include an incredibly sensitive Touch ID sensor similar to the iPad. So to sum it up, the Iris ID takes away accessibility for the disabled, such as the visually impaired, while the Touch ID stays within design guidelines of Apple and has stronger security.
Another major factor we decided the Touch ID methodology had a greater advantage than the iris recognition is due to the iris lack of security and its fail in other major competitors. A few years ago, Samsung introduced iris recognition to the public as a certification method. The next year, Apple introduced Face ID authentication against Samsung. At the time, Apple adopted Face ID as its main authentication method as a way to remove fingerprint recognition buttons from the screen and bring design advantages. Samsung also introduced an attractive authentication method called iris recognition, but had to give up the advantage of the extended display as a design due to the iris recognition sensors that were to be located at the top of the screen. Also, iris recognition software is proven to not be as effective in terms of unlocking compared to fingerprint scanners, as the trials displayed that it did not recognize eyes correctly or at all when wearing glasses or contact lenses. After a while, they abandoned iris recognition by introducing ultrasonic fingerprint scanner that had improved security, convenience, and ultimately a faster recognition process for unlocking the phone. Thank you for watching video.